Hello, and welcome to episode 6 of season 2 of the Unlimited Opinions podcast. I'm Adam Bishop.
I'm Mark Bishop.
And of course, we are reading Jake Jackson's Myths and Legends, with myths and legends from around the world. And this time we are finishing up our section on Celtic mythology with the Fenian cycle, Tales of Finn McCool and the Fianna. This was a very, very interesting section to me. I really liked this section. Finn McCool is a cool dude.
Well, you know, I was thinking, I now have a regret as it comes to my children. And it's that I didn't read this book before I named you guys, because that is the best name ever. Finn McCool. You know what do you think? Wouldn't you rather have been Finn McCool Bishop?
Finn McCool Bishop would be a good name, yeah.
Phineas McCool Bishop.
Phineas, yeah. It's good. It's good. It's very good. So we start off with, as you might expect, the coming of Finn McCool's origin story. So this takes place hundreds of years after the death of Cuchulainn in the Knights of the Red Guard, of course, our big hero in the last section. And after their absence came a new warrior, Finn McCool. So we start off with Cumaill, who is the son of Trenmor of Clan Brachna, father of Finn, and he was one of the bravest leaders of the Fianna until he was slain by his rival Gol Mac Morna at the Battle of Cumaill. The clan of Morna stole the treasure bag of the Fianna and placed it in charge of Leah, a chieftain of Connacht, who had first wounded Cumaill. And Cumaill's pregnant wife, Mine, fled, and within the month she gave birth to a son she named Demna. So Gol Mac Morna heard of Cumaill's heir in Muirna and sent her son with 2 handmaids to seek safety in the mountains of the Slieve Bloom. Demna grew to be a very strong boy, and before he reached the age of 10, he could outrun deer, shoot hawks out of the sky, and pin down a charging boar with a spear. He was a very fine poet. And you'll see time and time again throughout this chapter, poetry is mentioned. It's a very big deal in the Fenian cycle. And when Demna was 14, he came to Maglifa, where he saw a group of boys hurling, and he asked to join them, easily beating all 12 of them in the game single-handedly.
Did you look up what hurling was?
I did not. I probably should have.
You should have. We both should have, and I thought of that this evening, and then I forgot to do it.
Yes, we probably should have. The chieftain of Maglifa heard of this great skill, and he came to Demna and gave him the name Finn, which means fair one, for Finn's blonde hair, and he was known by this name ever since. Now at this time, Gol Mac Morna had heard the rumors of this Finn, believing him to be Cumaill's heir, and so he sent out another search, and Finn retreated to the Slieve Bloom. Tired of living alone, Finn finally entered the military service of the King of Bantry, quickly surpassing all the other warriors in skill. The king then challenged him to a game of chess, and Finn easily beat him 7 times, after which the king recognized him as Cumaill's heir and advised him to leave his company.
I'm surprised there's so many references to the playing of chess in these stories.
Chess is a big deal. It's a very, very rich tradition in Celtic lands, I guess.
Yeah. You know, I did look up the origin of chess.
Really?
India.
I think I knew that once upon a time.
And it spread through Persia and the Muslim lands, and then Southern Europe, and I guess eventually it got to Ireland.
Fascinating. That's really interesting. Yeah. And so Finn, after leaving the king of Bantry, moved into Connacht, where he met a woman weeping over her slain son, who begged him to track down the murderer. So he eventually did find the murderer, coming to the home of Leah Luchair, killing him with little effort. Then, after he killed this man, he noticed a strange bag on the floor, recognizing it as the treasure bag of the Fianna, realizing that he had slain the man who had dealt his father his first blow many years ago. Finn then set out to find his uncle Cumaill and the rest of Clan Brachna. Upon finding them and hiding in Connacht...
Hold on. You gotta let me pipe in. You're just rolling over me. I had a comment to make.
Zoom doesn't let you talk over me. It dims you out until I stop talking.
Well, what the hell?
Yeah. It's weird. Blame Zoom, not me.
I'm blaming you. You're in charge of this thing. Anyway, I was going to say that he kind of had a rush to judgment based upon this wailing woman's word. Luckily, it turned out all right because it was a guy that, mortally wounded his father, but quite a fortunate twist of fate that he wasn't just some innocent bystander and then he murdered him.
Yes, that's very true. If it had been anyone else, it would not have turned out quite as pleasant.
Correct. I thought it was an important point to make.
Yes, that was an important point. Finn then found the rest of his family hiding in Connacht, and Cumaill, his uncle, told his nephew to seek out the bard Finnegas, who will prepare him to be the leader of the Fianna. He came to Finnegas, who had been laying on the banks of the River Boyne for 7 years, waiting to catch the salmon of Fick. and the first person to eat the flesh of the salmon would grant all of the wisdom of the world. As Finn sat by Finnegas, the salmon swam up, and Finnegas caught it easily, then telling Finn to cook it, but not to eat a single morsel. After doing so, Finnegas asked if he had eaten any of the salmon, and Finn said no, but he had burned his thumb on the fish and put his thumb in his mouth to relieve the pain. Finnegas, recognizing that the boy had already tasted some of the flesh, recognized him as Finn MacColl, already having tasted some of the fish, and so told him to eat the rest, and Finn then composed the finest of poems. So that is Finn McCool's origin story, where he eventually catches a fish.
Yeah, magical salmon.
Yes, magical salmon. Very big deal, this salmon. He had been sitting on the banks of the Boyne for 7 years to catch this one fish.
I know the feeling, but usually for me it's like 2 hours seems like 7 years of fishing.
Yeah, that's about right. I've never caught anything. I've never caught a single fish.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
You should have gone fishing with me this summer. I don't want to catch anything big, but good luck.
Yeah. I guess I'm not a very talented fisher.
Fisherman? Or fisher?
Fisherman? Fisher?
Fisher of men?
Fisher of men? No. I don't think I'm an apostle.
Wasn't there a thing in here about if he needed wisdom or had to think about a problem, he'd suck his thumb?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually brought up in the next story. But yeah, anytime he needs wisdom, he can suck his thumb and he'll get the knowledge he needs.
So I just kind of contemplate this, very big warrior sitting in the corner sucking his thumb, thinking about the world's problems.
What's really interesting to me is kind of how Finn replays a lot of the sort of escapades of Cuchulainn, at least in this first section, especially with hurling, because that's almost beat for beat what happened to Cuchulainn as he showed this great skill, and then the king came to him and recognized his great power and all of this sort of stuff. So that was very interesting to me.
Yeah. He also had this kind of somewhat standard being cast out on your own to seek your own way, in the wild, and then coming back, a hero and that kind of stuff. But yeah, the same sort of hurling domination.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if maybe they weren't very good hurlers, and because these guys were novices and they just crushed them.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the Irish people are generally bad at hurling.
What's interesting to me to kind of connect this to other world mythology is this is kind of a similar theme you see, especially in Greek mythology and then later the Roman mythology. I'm kind of learning about this in Latin class a little bit, but with Homer's Odyssey, you have Odysseus traveling to the island of the Cyclops Polyphemus, and then the Aeneid, later written by Virgil, a Roman. Homer was a Greek, Virgil was the Roman. He kind of thinks, oh, okay, well, this epic had this person going to this place, so my new hero, Aeneas, kind of has to do these same things to be this great hero. And so he, of course, kind of retraces some of the footsteps of Odysseus, traveling to the island of the Cyclops Polyphemus, and he kind of like recounts some of those stories in that way, which I think is just an interesting thing. We see like different generations of heroes kind of doing the same thing in world mythologies.
Yeah, we should create our own.
Yeah, you've said that before.
Yeah, we got to start putting pen to paper.
We really should.
American mythology.
That'd be a good idea.
We'd have to have some sort of level of LGBTQ asterisk in the story.
What makes you say that?
I think it's required now, isn't it?
Maybe.
I think actually, I was thinking the other day, this current society and environment is so ripe for a great parody story, like a mocking story. What was the is it Bacchus? What's the name of the story where it's very similar to like the ancient Greek and Roman stories about whether society gets decadent, has a lot of parallels to today's day and age about promiscuity and lack of morals and having affluence but no wisdom or work.
Interesting.
And I see a lot of that today. So that would really, I think, a short story about like some naive farm boy going into a university setting or into a cosmopolitan area and being befuddled and everybody thinking him a rube, but it turns out that he's wise, or the wisest man in the room. I think there's certainly a market for that story. because it's just not being told.
Hmm.
And I think, especially in like cinematic history, there's so many examples of that, especially like early 1930s and 1940s, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington and Meet John Doe. Meet John Doe is a really powerful movie. I saw that a couple months ago. It's really about the corruption of the elites and how a lowly guy tries to make the society better, and basically they try to crush him and almost drive him into suicide and all that kind of stuff.
Interesting. It's fascinating.
Yeah. So
that'll be phase one. That'll be book one of the Bishop cycle. That sort of parody story.
Well, we'd have to make ourselves the hero of it. It's a Bishop cycle, wouldn't we? That's all right. We can do that.
I think you can do that pretty easily.
Or maybe you should just live it out. You're starting to live it out. You're in the wilds of Kirksville, Missouri.
Yes, I sure am. Good old Truman State.
Meeting all sorts of interesting characters at school.
I sure am. That's an understatement.
I suspect that at some point, someone is going to be listening back on these podcasts to try to get some way to attack you. And so we should both just acknowledge now that anything I say is my responsibility alone and has no bearing on your views.
I think you have made that disclaimer several times on this podcast, so I don't know what that says about the views displayed here.
Well, I think it's just two things. One is I don't want anybody attacking you. Number two is there is nothing but that in today's society for a heterosexual Catholic Republican. You will find very few avenues of support or even safe haven. But that will change soon.
That was very uplifting. Thank you.
It will change. We're going back.
All right.
Well, I think our country has gone through waves of religious revival in the past. Mm-hmm. Usually like Pentecostal, that type of thing, non-denominational. You've seen it over and over again, and we're well overdue for it. Although we're kind of in a religious revival, but it's the atheist religion. But anyway, I digress. We're not talking about
that was a bit of a digression.
Or aggression.
Maybe.
But anyway, these stories are really neat. How they kind of talk about how these guys overcome struggles, and this guy had to be banished. His father killed, and his mother. I guess, do we ever find out what happened to his mother? I guess she never saw him.
She never shows up. I think the implication is that that she was eventually killed, I guess, because that's why she abandoned her child to kind of throw off the searchers, because they'd be looking for her. They've never seen this baby, so they don't know what this baby looks like, so it'd be safer if the baby went and not her.
Kind of in some ways similar to the story of Moses.
Yes.
He's given away to the queen's handmaiden or whatever, and then ends up rising to be a king. Mm-hmm. Or a prince. Never really made it to be king.
Yeah, there's some actually definite Christian parallels I saw in a couple stories ahead of this, so we should probably move on to the next story.
Sounds good.
The rise of Finn to leadership of the Fianna. So this is kind of the second half of his origin story, I guess you could say. So after eating the salmon of Fake, all Finn had to do was bite his thumb in his mouth, and knowledge was revealed to him. As we said earlier, that's kind of how he gains wisdom. So he then returned to Cumaill and his followers, who decided that they should plead their case before Con Ceathach, the High King of Erin. It was now November, the time of the great assembly of the Hill of Tara, when all the clans joined the High King in festivities at Tara. So Finn entered the hall and proclaimed himself Finn, son of Cumaill, pledging his service to the king, and the king graciously accepted. So each man of his band was then presented with a sword of the Fianna, and Gol Mac Morna, who sat at the king's right hand, was absolutely furious. Now every year, during the great assembly, the goblin Ailen would come to Tara, playing his magic harp that puts everyone to sleep, and then he would set the palace alight with his flaming breath, as you do. Gol Mac Morna, wanting to damage Finn's reputation with an impossible task, then proposed that Finn should kill Ailen. Finn agreed on the condition that if he succeeded, he would receive his position as captain of the Fianna, to which the High King agreed. That night, as Finn waited for Ailen, an older warrior approached him, introducing himself as Fiacha, having served under Cumaill many years ago. He gave him a magic spear, saying that he can reverse the goblin's spell by touching the spear to his forehead. Hours passed, and Finn finally saw the eerie form coming closer, playing its haunting music, but he quickly used the spear to remain awake. Island then reached the hill of Tara, breathing fire, but when he saw Finn, he fled, because he had never before seen an alert human. So Finn chased him down, killing the goblin with a single hurl of his spear, removing Island's head, and then carrying it back to the palace. Upon returning, the High King proclaimed Finn as captain of the Fianna, and even Gol MacMorna pledged service to him, and it was ever after a great honor to serve under Finn McCool.
I love that name. And then again, we saw another reference to Arabia, where the spear had Arabian gold on it.
Mm-hmm.
The magic spear, presumably from Arabia, I guess.
Yeah.
It's a goblin killer. Well, that explains why they don't have any goblins in Egypt.
I guess so.
Well, I guess Arabian would be Saudi Arabia, would be Persia, I guess, rather than Egypt, I guess.
Mm-hmm. What was interesting to me about this story is, I mean, I'm sure you've read Beowulf before. I know I have.
Yeah, I did that in high school. Yeah.
Oh, I wasn't actually expecting you to say yes to that.
Huh.
Oh, yes. But this is like almost beat for beat kind of the opening section of Beowulf, where Beowulf, this great Germanic hero, goes to the Golden Hall of the Danes, and there they tell him that every night they're plagued by this beast called Grendel. And it's kind of ambiguous to what Grendel really is. Is it sort of a demon? Is it this goblin? Is it this kind of troll creature? But the way Beowulf kind of earns their trust and respect as kind of this leader figure is he does kill Grendel. And then, of course, he goes on to various other adventures, killing Grendel's mother and a dragon and that sort of thing. But it was very interesting to me just how similar these were with this High King, and they're plagued by this beast that comes regularly, and that the way to prove yourself was to kill this horrible beast.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yes,
to think of that.
I really enjoy Beowulf. Beowulf is one of my favorite stories.
I remember reading it, and I remember really liking it. But boy, I'd have a hard time remembering all the content of it.
Yeah.
I did read it a long time ago. We learned that in high school.
Yes.
And I was surprised in this is that his rival ended up pledging support to him.
Mm-hmm.
I was expecting it to go a different way, but because he put him up to, oh yeah, well, you think you're hot stuff, the king will really like you if you kill this goblin. And it doesn't tell him that the goblin plays a harp; it puts you to sleep automatically. And so I guess he was planning on the goblin killing him, maybe, or at least discrediting him as a warrior. And it turns out he's able to figure out how to kill the goblin, and then he pledged his support. I thought for sure he was going to try to kill him or something.
Mm-hmm. That's what I thought was interesting, because this is very different. If you remember a couple episodes ago, the story of the children of Lear, when they're kind of made to do all these quests, and then when they're dying, they go to the original quest giver and ask for his aid to heal them, and then he just outright refuses. So this was kind of something I was expecting to see here, where he either, just refuses to accept Finn as his leader, or Finn refuses to accept him in his company. But it's interesting that he does actually, accept this guy.
Yeah. Seems like maybe the other story was told in a darker, more difficult age or something.
Mm-hmm.
It was a little more safety and security. You could forgive those kind of rivalries and just work together.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe,
perhaps.
This era of story seems softer to me,
mm-hmm.
Except for this next one, which I thought, well, maybe he just became an angry old man, but it seemed like his character turned some point between the story we just read and then the next one,
mm-hmm.
where he seems like a vengeful, jealous old man.
Yeah, these next couple stories I think are considerably darker than those first two. I think it's definitely maybe a different era of writing, different authors, penning these down. But yeah, it's very, very interesting, sort of the shift between all these Celtic stories.
Right.
And so this next story is their pursuit of Diarmuid and Grain. I do not know if I'm pronouncing those names right, of course, as with anything else in this entire book. And so this takes place much later after Finn's origin story. And he's at this point an old man, and his wife Magnus had died, and Finn spent an entire year completely unhappy, depressed. His son Usheen and grandson Oscar then called upon Finn's lifelong friend, Diorung Obaoshna, to find an idea for him to recover. Diorung suggested that they find him a new wife.
By the way, these two are the villains in this story. They should have just left the guy be alone with the sorrows of, devoted to his deceased wife, and should have just let him get over it in his own good time, because everything went south from this point on.
Yeah, that's very true. And so he suggested that they, of course, find him a new wife, and Uiscin thought of Cormac MacArt, the High King of Erin at this point, and his beautiful daughter, Grain. They persuaded Finn that he had nothing to lose by pursuing this girl, and so they traveled to Tara, and King Cormac was more than pleased by this proposition. He then asked Grain's her opinion on this matter, and she disinterestedly and flippantly agreed without ever seeing Finn herself.
Mistake number 2.
Yes, big mistake.
First mistake is for these guys to say, hey, I think it's a good idea, Gramps, for you to marry this young maiden that you've never met before because she's the fairest in the land and she rejects everybody. And mistake number 2 is her to say flippantly, yeah, sure, I'll marry him, whatever.
Yep, a lot of mistakes in this story. And so within a week, a feast was held in Tara with all the Fianna to celebrate the coming wedding. Now, Grain had absolutely no idea what all these festivities were for, and so she asked the druid Daira for information about what was going on. So he explained that she was to be married, and Grain was very shocked to hear that she was to marry the elderly Finn and not either of his sons, as that would be much more acceptable and suitable. She then kind of went down the line of the people sitting at the high table and asked Daira about who they were, and she eventually showed a great interest in a particular handsome warrior. Daira said that he was Diarmuid, son of Dubna, the best lover in the world. Why this dude knows that, or why this is so heavily bragged about or well known, is beyond me, but is a very interesting characteristic.
Well, everybody's got to be good at something.
I guess that's true. This is his thing. So Garin then presented her goblet that was large enough for 9 people to drink from to the heads of the table, bidding them all to drink deeply. Within a few minutes, all who had drunk fell into a deep slumber, including Finn and the king, and Grain approached Diarmuid, asking him to run away with her. He first refused, but she revealed that she had fallen for him many years ago and was so bound to him in love.
Which I don't understand, because she claims to not know any of these people, so she has to be this guy has to explain who's everybody. So I think she's lying there. So she poisons everybody and puts them to sleep, number 1. And then she lies to him, oh yeah, I saw you a few years ago and I thought you were a real hottie. I think she's lying because she didn't even know who he was. Although I guess in fairness, maybe she didn't recognize him again, but if she loved him for so many years, why didn't she see him when he first came in, as opposed to having somebody explain who's here and who are all these dudes over there?
Yeah, I guess she could very well be lying here. It's very interesting that that's kind of what she says. But what's even more interesting...
I have changed my mind. She is the villain in the story.
All right. Thank you for the update.
And I will give you reasons why as we go through the story.
So what's even more interesting is that Diarmuid consulted with Uiscin, Oscar, and Dioring, and they all agreed that he had little choice but to go with her due to the bonds of love. Which I don't know why they would all agree with that, considering that they are Finn's son, grandson, and best friend, to just agree that, his bride-to-be should run away with this dude, but I guess it made sense for them.
Well, I think it's a reference, she bound him as the princess, and so he didn't have a choice but to go with her. Now what he did with her was up to him.
Okay.
I think he had to escort her because she said leave with me and I love you, and he says nope, I'm not doing it, maybe you should go back to the old man. And then she says I'm what was the exact phrasing, something like you're now bound to me and I'm fleeing and you must go with me to protect me, essentially.
That makes sense.
Right. And so then he's like, okay, now I've got this obligation to the old man, who's the greatest guy ever, and he's my boss. And then I got this moral obligation, this kind of like what do you say, like a gentleman's obligation to protect this lady as she flees into the woods, and I'm stuck. That's why he's asking the buddies. And they're like, hey, you gotta go. She bound you. Now off you go. And yes, and goodbye, and he will hunt you down and kill you both.
Yes, exactly. And so knowing that Finn would hunt him down, Diarmuid embraced his comrades, knowing his impending exile, and so he left with Grain. Upon learning of this, Finn was very, very much consumed with rage, and he immediately set out to find them, eventually coming to a small earthen shelter with 7 doors. The Fianna then guarded each door, and Diarmuid looked out a window, kissing Grain 3 times, outraging Finn even more, who ordered his head to be just absolutely chopped off.
He's like, hey, you come for me? Look at me. I'm kissing your girl. Right in the window.
Exactly.
7 doors, fortunately, because 7 people showed up.
Yes, exactly. So now Angus Og, the god of love, was the foster father of Diarmuid, and he had been protecting the couple, and so he offered to hide them under his invisible cloak and so pass by all these men completely unseen.
Which I guess explains why he's such a good lover, because he's the half son or whatever of the god of love.
Mm-hmm. I'm guessing there's some other, mythological story related to that. I'm guessing Diarmuid would have been a well-known figure by the time that this story was written.
Yep, certainly by the ladies.
Yeah. And so Diarmuid politely refused this offer, insisting that he face his former comrades, so Angus only took Ryan to safety. Diarmuid then went to the first door, where Ushin's gentle voice proclaimed that he did not want to hurt him, and that he would rather he go free.
I don't want to hurt you. I want you to go free.
Thank you for the live replay of that. I really appreciate it. Yes. And so he went down all the doors, and the same conversation happened at all of them, with all the Fianna proclaiming that they really didn't want to hurt them.
I don't want to hurt you either. Me neither.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
I know.
And so he came to the 7th door, where Finn stood, and Finn claimed that he would cleave all of the bones of his body asunder, so a very different tone from the rest. So then Diarmuid then drove his spears into the earth and used them to spring over the walls of the hut and clear over the Fianna, running effortlessly to freedom towards Angus Og and Grianna. Grian. It's very hard to pronounce, who knows. And so Angus Og then cautioned them to never remain in one place, lest Finn find them, and he then departed. For many months they did so, but wanting to finally stay in one place for at least a couple nights, they came to the forest guarded by the giant Shervan. After hearing their plea, Shervan accepted them into the forest on the condition that they never touch the tree of Dubros or eat its sweet berries, which were of the fairy mounds that grant immortality. So Finn, of course, entered into Shervan's wood, and he drew close to Shervan's wood when he saw 2 warriors of Morna's line who had come to beg forgiveness and resolve their clan feud. So Finn then asked them for one of 2 things, either the head of Diarmuid or a fistful of berries from the forest. So the 2 entered the forest, and they came to Diarmuid, but they attempted to fight him, but he very, very easily overthrew them and bound them. Grian, then hearing of the properties of the berries from these 2 brothers, desired them very deeply, and Diarmuid began preparing to fight Shervan, knowing that he couldn't possibly change this woman's mind. Mistake number 3, I think, if you're counting.
That is correct, and it also shows how she is still the villain, because even though they fled, now this guy has tied up these 2 guys that were sent to kill him, and he's victorious. But she insists, you know what? I think I want those berries. The ones you promised that giant not to touch. Why don't you get me a sack of those? Oh, there we go. The next scene.
Yes.
Okay, I guess I gotta kill the giant. He just mind his own business in his forest. He lets the guy and the gal live there, and they're not harmed. He just says, "Hey, don't eat my berries."
Mm-hmm.
So what do? They eat the berries.
Yes.
It's like Adam and Eve.
And I was actually going to make that connection later on.
Too late.
Okay. The children of Morna then graciously offered to grab them instead to keep Diarmuid from breaking his bonds of friendship, but he declined this offer, although he was very, very touched by their generosity. Diarmuid then woke Shervan, demanding some berries, which caused a terrible fight, in which Diarmuid finally took the giant's club from him, beating him 3 times with it, and then grabbing some of the berries.
Bashing his brains in.
Yes, I forgot to mention that detail.
He didn't just strike him, he killed the guy.
Yes, he absolutely killed him. So Diarmuid then gave some of these berries to the children of Morna, telling them to tell Finn that they had killed Shervan without seeing Diarmuid. They rejoiced in this attempt to make peace between the clans, but when they brought the berries to Finn, he proclaimed that he could smell the traitor's skin on them, and so he went into the forest himself with the Fianna. He then placed a chessboard under the tree of Dubros and played a very well-matched game with his son Ushin. Diarmuid was, of course, up in the branches of the tree of Dubros, and he was watching the game from above. And wanting to help his friend Ushin, he dropped a berry on the board where Ushin should move next, thereby revealing his position, and so Finn then ordered Garb of Sliab Quia to climb the tree, which is just a fantastic name. You should have named me Garb.
Well, we can always change it.
That's true. I could change my name to Garb.
You could do a legal name change. You have to publish a notice and get a hearing.
I could change my name to Garb. That'd be nice.
I think maybe Finn McCool. Or you could be Adam Franklin Finn McCool Bishop.
Ooh, that's good. And my saint name is Francis, so it really rolls off the tongue.
Adam Franklin Francis Finn McCool?
Yes, exactly. And so Angus Og was watching at this time, trying to protect the couple. And when Diarmuid then saw this warrior Garb coming up the tree, he kicked him out. And Angus Og then cast a spell on him, giving him the form of Diarmuid, causing the warriors to see him fall and chop his head off, believing him to be Diarmuid. And when he was dead, it revealed that he was really Garb. And so Finn, didn't quite take the hint and set 9 more warriors up the tree, and all of them died this exact same way. And eventually Finn just couldn't tolerate any more killing. And so he called the whole thing off, and Angus Og and Diarmuid came down, restoring peace between Finn and Diarmuid. And so Diarmuid and Grian lived in peace in Kerry for many years. And that is how it ends.
Yeah, that kind of disappointed me because the guy's fallen out of the tree or whatever 9 times. It reminded me of like a Monty Python skit. Like, there he is! Cut his head off! That's not him! Send somebody else up. There he is! Oh, not again! Surely not the 3rd time.
Oh, yeah, that's...
On. And finally, Finn just goes, to heck with it. I'm tired of killing people. That's it?
Yep, that was it. I was expecting some sort of showdown between Finn and Diarmuid or some sort of big climax, but nope, he just kind of gets sick of killing his own men.
Yeah, and it wasn't even like he bested him, and I thought he would be like some sort of challenge, and I thought really at the 7 doors scene, I thought that he would come out, and because he came out that 7th door, then Finn would respect him or something, and they'd be okay, but he hopped over him, catapulted himself with his spears, and ran away like a little rabbit.
This story definitely feels to me, this is complete speculation, I don't know for sure, but it definitely feels like a story made up of many other stories that were kind of combined over time to be one bigger thing. And so I think if you took each of these individually, they'd have more, sort of resounding principles or, much more grounding, I guess.
Right. Because the Finn character seems to be a little out of character from the previous ones, and it doesn't really... It doesn't make so much sense that he gets so enraged that he goes on seemingly for years trying to track these people down, and they can't spend. I think it was the advice was don't eat a meal in the same place where you cook it. Don't sleep too. That's moving a lot.
Yeah.
And as Saddam Hussein realized to his detriment, that you have to live that way for a long time. You can't settle down for a couple of nights because they're going to end up pulling you out of a rat hole and killing you.
It was at least many months because several months did pass where they were just doing that sort of cycle after escaping from the hut. So it was a very, very long time.
Right. And then she's like, I'm tired of this. And then again to their doom.
Mm-hmm. The other connection, sorry if I cut you off, but the other connection I wanted to make, you kind of mentioned earlier, but it does sort of resemble Genesis with Shervan's tree. The berries here with immortality, and in Genesis, the berries of ultimate knowledge, essentially. And I just think it's interesting because these stories were, by and large, written down by Christian missionaries, not the Celtic people themselves. So I was wondering, how much of that is, intentional kind of relation to Genesis? What was there like an original story that was somewhat in the same vein that they kind of expanded into the same moral, or, how much of that, similarity actually carried over?
Right. Or if the missionaries over time teaching people those Bible stories maybe kind of got put into a more traditional story by the Celtic people, if that makes sense, rather than being inserted by the writers.
Mm-hmm. That was a thing that happened to a few of these. I listened to this other mythology podcast called Mythos and Logos.
What? You're cheating on us?
Yes, I am. I'm so sorry. But they did this episode on this character, Brigid, who was sort of originally this Celtic goddess, I forget exactly what she stood for and those sort of principles that she held for the Celtic people. But when the Christian missionaries came over, either there was a historical Brigid that was sort of similar to this mythological Brigid that was a Christian or a Catholic, and sort of embodied these things. And they kind of sort of married these two concepts together, with the Christian Bridget becoming a saint, and sort of representing some of the similar things that this mythological Bridget did. So I think it is interesting, how those things kind of carry over.
Yeah.
That's very fascinating.
50.
Yes. Moving on to the last story, Uiscin in Tir na nog, or the Land of Youth. This is the last story for all of the Celtic section. It's very, very sad.
I expected the Celtic stories to be more uniformly sad, but this one certainly filled the bill.
Yes, absolutely. And so Uiscin, of course, the son of Finn MacCool, was a true warrior and the greatest poet of the Fenian people. One day, while he was hunting near Loch Lyn, a beautiful maiden appeared before him, and she was very, very richly attired. She said that she was Niamh, daughter of the king of the Land of Youth, and she invited him to Tir na nog, saying, "Delightful land of honey and wine, beyond what seems to thee most fair, rich fruits abound the bright year round, and flowers are found of hues most rare. Unfailing there the honey and wine, and draughts divine of mead there be. No ache nor ailing night or day, death or decay thou ne'er shalt see. 100 swords of steel refined, 100 cloaks of kind full rare, 100 steeds of proudest breed, 100 hounds thy need when there. The royal crown of the king of youth shall sign in sooth on thy brow most fair, all brilliant with gems of lustre bright, whose worth or right none might declare. All things I've named thou shalt enjoy, and none shall cloy to endless life, beauty and strength and power thou'lt see, and I'll ever be thine own true wife." So if you had that poem, would you accept this invitation to go to the Land of Youth?
I did.
Did you?
Yes, I haven't touched the ground since.
Wow, that's very impressive. And so, of course, what he's referring to here is a bit later in the story, but Uiscin accepts this gracious request, and he bid a valiant farewell to the Fianna, and so he crossed over the entirety of the land of Erin and went through various kingdoms of the other world. And so on the way, they passed many beautiful cities, but Niamh said that the Land of Youth was even more majestic than anything he could find in any of these realms. So they finally came to Tir na nog, where the city and its surroundings were far more beautiful than anywhere else. Uiscin and Niamh were soon wedded and had 3 children, and Uiscin was respected and admired by all of the people of the land. However, after some time, he was plagued by nightmares of the Fianna, and he soon wanted to return to his people. Niamh said that she wouldn't hinder him, but she did give him the warning that if he left the Land of Youth, if he ever touched Erin's soil, he would never return to the land. So Uiscin then left Tir na nog, riding to the land of Fianna, but where the stronghold of Finn MacCool once stood, there were now just crumbling stones. So he came across a pair of peasants who were struggling to lift up a slab of granite, and they revealed that it had been hundreds of years since the Battle of Gabra, where the warrior chieftain Finn had died. They asked for help lifting the stone, and filled with pride in his strength, Uiscin fell from his horse to get a better angle to lift, thereby touching Erin's soil. And so this last section is just very brutal in its description, so I'll just read it in its entirety here. In an instant, his steed had disappeared into thin air, his royal garments had turned to grimy sackcloth, and his youthful warrior's face had become creased and lined as the burden of 300 years of mortal life fell on him. Withered and blind, he reached out with his bony arms, grasping in the dark for some form of comfort. A wretched, pitiful cry escaped his lips, and he heard again Niamh's parting words to him. As he lay helpless on the cold, damp earth, he began to weep inconsolably for the wife and children to whom he could never now return in the land of eternal youth. And that is how that story ends, and how the entire segment on Celtic mythology ends. A very, very brutal ending to that section.
Also a beautiful story, though. I mean, it's compelling, and I can't remember the reference. I know I don't know if it's a Star Trek. I always mention Star Trek, but there was some sort of science fiction time travel type story where the bad people never aged until something happened, and then the hero figures out the thing that would cause them to age their own age, and then they withered away and turned into powder in front of them. I can't remember. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I think I know vaguely what that could be like a couple different things. I think though. I don't know if I know exactly what you're talking about.
I've been thinking about it all day, and I can't figure out the reference I'm thinking. But I was thinking it was like a science fiction story where there are some bad people that they live forever, and there's some sort of way to cause them to return to the mortal life, and then they just died, because they withered away because they aged 1,000 years in 5 minutes or whatever.
Yeah. That is a very beautiful story. I didn't go into all the description, of course, but kind of like describing the lands that they passed, and then Tir na Nog itself. There's a lot of pretty lengthy paragraphs, just describing Niamh first and her, attire, and then all the beautiful lands that they pass and that sort of thing. So it's a very detailed story that we didn't really get into too much, but it's worth a read.
What do you think the moral of the story is? I've been wrestling with that one.
I think it was, I guess very much just present towards the end, because I think it does like kind of explicitly state that the reason he even leaned over like in his horse was to get a better angle because of his pride. He looked at these peasants and he's like, how did this bloodline get so weak? I'm much stronger than them. And so he then fell out of his horse.
Yeah, but I saw that. I think you're right about that. I was thinking about like, he goes off to this wonderful land, but he couldn't leave behind the soil of Erin or something. And then it was a timeless land. Obviously, he had lived for 300 years. He didn't realize he had lived that long. I don't know. It just seemed maybe he should have just appreciated what he had.
Mm-hmm. That was kind of what I was thinking. At some point, you don't realize what you've lost until you've got everything you've wanted, I guess.
Ooh, that's pretty good.
Thank you.
But how could you have lost anything if you have everything you wanted?
I guess it's kind of the same thing. You didn't really appreciate what you had. Now, in gaining everything, you've lost what you used to have.
So I guess if you get everything if you got everything you wanted,
mm-hmm.
How'd you say that again? It's like if you get everything you wanted, you don't realize what you've lost.
Yes.
Sometimes. That's pretty profound.
Thank you. I don't know if it makes sense.
No, it does, because you didn't want what you had,
mm-hmm.
and so you got everything you wanted, but you didn't realize what you lost, which is what you had before, which may have not been better, but it was something.
Yeah, but it was important to you, and now you'll be kind of plagued by the memory of what was important to you.
I believe that his wife probably should have disclosed more of what they were doing. Like, okay, we're going to this land. It's going to be timeless. Everybody you leave behind is going to still age and they're going to be gone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if she would have told him that, I think his nightmares would have gone away.
Maybe.
He was like, I need to go back and see my family. He gets there, and it's not only that they're gone, the whole castle's in ruins because so much time has elapsed,
mm-hmm.
hundreds of years. And if she would have said, hey, look, man, they've been dead for like, I know you only been here for like a half hour, but they were dead like in the first minute, so they're already gone. There's nothing to go back to. You think she would have told her that?
Yeah, you would think so. It's kind of the used car salesman pitch, not telling you all of the terms and conditions.
True. You want some undercoating with that?
Yeah.
What is undercoating? I don't know, but do you want it? I guess. There's a Seinfeld episode about where Putty is selling him the undercoating, and it's a pretty funny episode. And he asks him something along the lines of, Seinfeld says, well, what does the undercoating do? And Putty says something like, I don't know. Nothing. Nobody knows.
That's pretty good.
But yeah, but even once she got him to go, I get not disclosing everything, and hey, big fella, you like my singing and my robes and stuff? Come on. And then he would have just gone.
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't ask, okay, what are the terms of this deal? He just said, you're beautiful, I'm with you. But once he's there, and he's like thinking about leaving, she should have said, okay, well, if you leave, but she did say if you touch the ground, okay,
mm-hmm.
fair enough. And he should have been a lot more careful. But she probably should have said, hey, look, you can go back, but there's nobody there.
Yeah.
I don't know if she wouldn't have told him that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good question.
These ladies, man, they get you.
That's the moral. These ladies, they'll get you. That's the moral of the story.
Well, it's the same as the other one with the, hey, I want that bucket of berries, Hey, I want you to run away with me, and now you're bound to me. And so it's either you stay here and you're dishonored and you're going to be, probably kicked out of your clan because you didn't abide by the bounds I gave you, or you're going to be on the run with me for the rest of your life, and ultimately probably brutally murdered.
Mm-hmm.
That's not nice.
It is not. What'd you think of the Celtic stories as a whole, now that we've read all of them that are in this book?
I thought they were really interesting stories. I had never heard them before, and I thought they were good stories. They held my interest and had twists and turns I didn't anticipate. So I thought they were pleasant reading,
mm-hmm.
really. And Um, a lot less sad I thought they were going to be. I just I just expecting with the Irish history that I know, which is more modern, they didn't have a whole lot of success.
Yeah, unfortunately.
So I was expecting tales of woe,
Yes.
just like Job, from the Bible. I was expecting a whole bunch of Job characters, but yeah, I thought that was pretty neat and interesting stories about honor and service and duty.
Mm-hmm.
I always appreciate those. And then I saw a movie. I watched a movie the other day, 13 Assassins. It's a Japanese with English subtitles. It's by these samurai, and they were like two great samurais on either side. One for an evil prince, and the other one was going to be an assassin. And it's an interesting commentary on where your duty to your job and that, like, your role in society ends and where your duty to society begins. Mm-hmm. There's an interesting discussion because there's an evil prince and one of the samurais like, I don't care what your duty is, you got to kill a guy.
Yeah,
I won't give up the end, but it was a 45-minute battle scene where the 13 assassins were taking on 200 samurai or other sword-wielding Japanese warriors in a cascade of blood and swordplay.
Wow, sounds fantastic.
With some explosions.
Yeah, I was gonna. Great. Yeah,
I highly recommend it. It's fantastic. But what do you think?
I was just gonna say, kind of expanding on your things about duty, is that there's a big emphasis on family too that you really especially see. It's so much of importance that it's quite literally like what people's names are. Finn McCool is of course just Finn, the son of Cumaill, with the weird Celtic morphology there. But I think it's just very interesting just how many like feuds are purely because of what your father did or this guy did that's related to you, and everything kind of spawns almost from purely just a family setting, and that's where all these stories began.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I really enjoyed the stories overall, though. They're very much, in my wheelhouse of sort of fantastical, things I like. I wish we would have gotten a little bit more in this book of like the more high mythology sort of things, the gods and the goddesses and the fairies and that sort of thing. We got a lot of the heroic stuff, which is also very, very important. But I would have liked just a little bit more about, the actual, like, I don't know if you'd call it, theology, but like the pantheon and the creatures that make up this world.
That's what I think of when I think of mythology. Mm-hmm. I don't think of these hero stories as mythology, even though they're mythical type creatures. But I would agree 100% wholeheartedly.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's these are the stories that are easiest to tell. These are the ones that are passed down most often, because you can just say, well, this is this god of this, and this is this creature of this. But it's much more fun to retell a story of a famous hero.
Well, that's why the Greek stories are so good, because they tell a story of a god or a guy or a demigod, and then the gods are all playing their tricks or whatever, influencing or helping or hurting that person, and he's overcoming challenges. And I think that's why those are so good, is because they explain these gods, which are really like primordial forces of nature, or whatever you may say, and then how humans have to deal with them. So
yes,
I agree 100%. It was a good chapter. I enjoyed it. Next one I think is Chinese, isn't it?
Yes, which I know nothing about except that there are very, very many dragons.
Oh. Yes. I just finished a book about China.
Really? What
called
book?
Chasing the Dragon.
Oh.
And I got it. I don't know where I got it. I got a used bookstore somewhere. Good book. It was about written more recently, but it was a guy who was a reporter, journalist for Life magazine during the war between the nationalists and the communists.
Wow.
Mao versus Chiang Kai-shek.
Interesting.
It's fascinating reading, because he worked for an aid agency and then he got hired by Life. It's really kind of a biography, but it's also talks about what was happening. Mm-hmm. So it's fascinating. It's a neat read.
Yeah, it sounds interesting. All right. Well, that's what we have to look forward to next time, is Chinese mythology as inefficiently retold by us two.
Inefficiently? We're great commentators, and you're a great summarizer.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
I think our listener will be looking forward to it for a full week.
Yes. Speaking of our listener, there is still a t-shirt competition going on since, we've almost hit a year of recording the podcast overall. At the end of this month, it'll be a full year of doing these episodes. But you can follow us on Twitter. The first person to tweet us anything you want, will win a free t-shirt that we haven't designed yet. And the Twitter is, of course, capital U, lowercase LMTD, and then opinions with a capital O.
I believe it will have a Let's Go Brandon motif.
Fantastic.
I'm just joking. No.
Yes. All right. Well, this has been episode 6 of season 2 of Unlimited Opinions. I've been Adam Bishop.
Still Mark Bishop.
We really should think about that shirt on the off chance that one of these episodes does really well and somebody wants to what?
I don't think it's going to happen.
You don't think it's going to happen? We've been getting more downloads.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. I get the stats. They email it to me.
Do you? Yeah.
Yeah. But I haven't gotten one in a week or so, I guess. I guess they send it to you
every week, yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Well, do you want me to design it, or are you going to start looking at it? You got a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, I do. I don't know. We can design it together. We'll figure out a way. So, listener out there who's still listening to this end cap part, look out for that shirt in the future.
We'll have to work in an Antifa fist.
Absolutely.